Good morning and welcome to Animation History AAD427. Week 2, Day 3, which is our 6th day, and we have gone from the early days of zoetropes and phenakistoscopes down through Winsor McKay into the early days of Crazy Cat and Coco the Clown, and now we're into really kind of where there's this huge explosion of animation, and that is actually during the days of World War II. So actually, this isn't really all about war, but the thing is that World War II really is dominating the landscape, and it does shape a lot of things. And one thing that's really interesting is that um, times that are harder actually create, in my opinion, explosions of creativity. And I'm not sure whether that's to deal with, keep our sanity, or whether it's, more turbulent times require more um, artistic communication. So, so the thing is, as you can see here, we've got Bugs Bunny um, making an obvious mockery of Adolf Hitler. And but the thing I think is really important here is to say that different studios had different agendas. Some were more political, some were less political. And I think the idea of being political in World War II had some interesting overtones because, say, for example, Disney, I believe, was somewhat sympathetic to Nazi Germany. Um, Warner Brothers Studio, definitely not. MGM, no. But I mean, so the thing is that this caused a bit of different approaches to things. So Disney during wartime really, and whether or not regardless of Walt Disney's position, um, I think that we can look at the idea of saying that really what's going on is that we're looking at Disney as a business, and Mickey was positive and middle class and that sort of thing, and he's just sort of like saying he's not rocking the boat. So that's it. And then on the other hand, those who were supporting the war effort, you had Daisy and Minnie, kind of helping out, with construction and things like that. And you had Goofy at the gas station, and just basically supporting American infrastructure during the time. But Donald, he just kind of goes wild sometimes. So he's a zany, so he's the one that we normally see in the military in this regard. I don't have something here. Um, well, because American resources were going towards other things. A lot of studios slowed down, and Disney was no different. And but although the shorts were fairly high, the thing is that some of their most famous films were released during this period, but they didn't do as well as they hoped because people weren't really spending a lot of money, and they were delayed because of the war effort. One of them was Pinocchio, based on the children's novel The Adventures of Pinocchio by Collodi. And it was basically Disney's second big feature film. Um, you know, riding on the success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So the thing is that as Disney was focusing on musicals in the 1930s, he would really focus on the idea of coming of age stories. Pinocchio, Dumbo, that sort of thing. Here's a little trailer for no. Here's Pinocchio's lie.
Pinocchio, why didn't you go to school?
School? Well, um...
Go ahead, tell her.
I was going to school till I met somebody.
Met somebody?
Yeah, two big monsters with big green eyes. Why,
Monsters? Weren't you afraid?
No, ma'am, but they tied me in a big sack.
Don't say. And where was Sir Jiminy?
Oh, Jiminy?
Leave me out of this.
They put him in a little sack.
No.
Yeah.
How did you escape?
I didn't. They chopped me in the firewood. Oh, look. My nose. What's happened?
Perhaps you haven't been telling the truth, Pinocchio.
Perhaps.
Oh, but I have. Every single word. Oh, please help me. I'm awful sorry.
You see, Pinocchio, a lie keeps growing and growing until it's as plain as the nose on your face.
She's right, Pinocchio. You better come clean.
I'll never lie again. Honest, I won't.
Please, Your Honor. Miss Fairy, give him another chance. For my sake. Will you?
Oh, I'll forgive you this once. But remember, a boy who won't be good might just as well be made of wood.
So there you go. That's Pinocchio. And
Pinocchio.
oops. And Dumbo is another coming of age story. It was created in 1941. Was given the Academy Award for the best music in that year, and people loved it. And the one thing is that the one thing about Dumbo is that it had a really low production cost, and that gave Disney a really needed influx of cash, and it really helped them out at the time.
Look, the magic feather. I can see it all now. Look, we're flying. Dumbo, the ninth wonder of the universe, the world's only flying elephant.
Isn't it thrilling?
Dumbo, the great.
And of course, in 2019, that would become a remake, and I believe with Tim Burton. So, then after Dumbo, you have Bambi, another coming of age story. Based on the famous children's book. And the thing is that it was more ambitious. Disney had a bit more money, and it's going a little bit more towards realism. I mean, one of the saddest things is, Bambi's mom dying in the fire. Oh my God, it was terrible. So the thing is that you have Bambi making her way, making friends with Flower and Thumper and Wise Owl, Friend Owl, and here you go. One interesting thing is, how the trailers are built from now and then.
Disney, The world's greatest storyteller brings the world's greatest love story to the screen. Bambi, the story that proves that love can be loaded with laughs.
Well, what's the matter with them?
They're Twitter-pated.
Twitter-pated?
Yes. Nearly everybody gets Twitter-pated in the springtime.
It's not gonna happen to me.
Me neither.
It can happen to anybody. For example, you're walking along, minding your own business, when all of a sudden, you run smack into a pretty face. Woo-hoo! You begin to get weak in the knees. Your head's in a whirl. And then you feel light as a feather. And then you know what? You're knocked for a loop. And you completely lose your head.
Bambi, the story of a deer who learned that love means many things to many people. To his parents, it means courage and sacrifice.
It is man. We must go deep into the forest. Hurry.
To Bambi's mate, the lean, love is at once a tender and a terrifying thing. Quick, Pauline, jump! To Bambi himself, love comes to mean heroism and fearlessness.
Really dramatic, right?
Here, surging out of the roaring forest, is the most powerful, gripping, romantic story ever brought to the screen by Walt Disney.
Let's just take a second on that one. That's really exciting. So, but on one hand, we think that Bambi is this one story, and then look at how they're trying to sell it in the theaters. It's quite interesting. Okay. Fantasia, 1940. This is inspired by remember last couple discussions. Oscar Fissinger and his visual music. Disney did a lot of really experimental stuff. One was Fantasia, which dealt with a lot of classical music and animation. The other one, he did another one called, I forget what it was called, but it was with Dali. And, it's, and Disney really experimented a lot. And so, Fantasia, I invite you to watch it. It's interesting. There's a little bit of avant-garde stuff in it, and I would, and of course, there's Mazursky's Night on Bald Mountain, where you have Mickey as the magician's apprentice, which is so widely used in Disney's branding, even to this day. See the flower-coloring fairies. See the Chinese mushrooms. And of course, the ostrich ballet. Mickey and his magic broom. Next up, really, the Warner Brothers really hadn't been on the scene a great deal until the 1940s. So, really, about 1940, the Warner Brothers is starting to take hold. And you have a number of really big you have a bunch of animators who are going to become really huge. Bob Clampett, Tex Avery, who is actually my favorite, Friz Freleng, who did the Pink Panther, and Chuck Jones, and then Frank Tashlin taking Avery's chair, because the thing is that Avery goes off I think the MGM in 1942. So these guys during the war effort are they just take fire. They just go crazy. Here's some stuff with Tex Avery. He's totally off the hook. He's just crazy.
Beg pardon, miss. I was looking for that bait they call swing shift.
So Tex Avery is really extreme. He's really my favorite.
Hello, Joe. Hello again. Peekaboo.
So the thing is that when we talk about in the principles of animation, we talk about exaggeration, and this is something that Tex Avery really revolutionized. Then you can see there's some much different people. So Friz Freleng, he was gone for a little while Bugs and Daffy were around. But the thing is that he helped develop Daffy Duck, and he also did some very revolutionary things like integrating live and animated image, which would be something to see, which I think would be really great for one of the seniors of a future class to do.
position. Oh, you call this a job? Working in cartoons? Pooh. I know where you can get a job in features. As Betty Davis's leading man. $3 grand a week. Oh, I'm not good enough for that. Besides, I got a contract here. You can get out of that. Just go up and tell the boss that you want to quit. Do you think I ought to? Sure.
So a lot of this has to do with kind of the internal culture of the animation studios. Basically, at the time, animation was huge, had a huge amount of money, and with a relatively small number of people. So you had people who were trying to get better contracts, and so this is reflected within this particular piece. And then Friz Freleng. Here's what you probably know him by. Which is pretty awesome. So, Friz Freleng becomes one of the oldest names in the business. And by the way, if you want to go that crazy, I've got a full documentary on Friz that goes for about an hour. So I'm not going to take you through that here on the video, but
I can't explain how I do it or how anybody else does it, but you're thinking cartoon and you're thinking visually how it can be done in cartoon, because there's nothing in live action could compare. I guess you got to use your instincts to guide you on a lot of stuff, whether it's right or wrong. I mean, you can't set any rules, because half of them don't work.
You know what?
I think Friz Freleng gets taken for granted sometimes because he isn't as flamboyant, let's say, as some of the other directors, and he doesn't show off as much. But then you look at the body of his work, and you look at some of the specific gems that he made over the years, and you realize just how many really wonderful cartoons he made, and you realize that he takes a backseat to nobody.
So, he worked for Warner Brothers a lot. He did his own work, and you know what? This documentary probably wouldn't be bad for somebody's research paper. So Frank Tashlin, not so well known. Later on at Warner Brothers, he comes in 1942, and really what goes on is that he's kind of going that this guy Norm McCabe was supposed to go into the military, but and what happened is that McCabe took Tex Avery's spot, for a while. And Tashlin came and went and all that, and he did a lot of work for them. And this is part of a piece. I'm gonna just play part of it. Scrap Happy Daffy with Daffy Duck. And by the way, I'm going to talk about Carl Stalling. He did the music for this.
We're in to win, so let's begin to do the job with John. We're in to win, turn in your chin and listen to it plunk. To our nation's call, every rubber ball goes to conquer freedom's foe. Freedom's foe? Freedom's a foe. Freedom's foe. We're in to win, our scrap is in, so to victory, let's go. And do the job with John. Pots, pans, old tin cans, pails, nails, empty gales, fats, hats, rubber mats, missing legs, kitchen sinks, garbage cans, electric fans, rubber boots, bathing suits, reels, wheels, run-down heels, bench, springs, pips and rings, metal shears, old tin ears, tires, chains, water mains, skates, plates, furnace rates, pitching forks, rubber cords, sacks, racks, railroad tracks, clothes, hose, fiddle bows, plugs, lugs, bathroom rugs, collar keys, housemate knees, rubber bands, birdcage heads, metal snips, pillow snips, locks, locks, graphic locks. And that's why we're in to win.
So, and he bounces around to a lot of studios. But one of the people that you don't see quite so much. And then just Warner Brothers also, what happens is that they do this series called Sergeant Snafu, which means situation normal, all followed up. And he's basically a private in the U.S. Army who basically isn't a good soldier. He tells secrets. He's just really just kind of saying that he's portraying part of the web effort. I mean, part of the war effort. I'll just show you a little bit of it. So this is from the National Archives of the United States.
I'll be the war's greatest hero. With these guns, I have nothing to fear. Oh, my guns are the best. They can meet any test. Oh, I'll be the war's greatest hero. Oh, I'm the world's best damn fighting machine. Oh, them Nazis will learn what I mean. Oh, my wonderful guns will murder them bums, and I'll bury them in the latrino.
So you have some, you have the the Warner Brothers studio, kind of doing their own propaganda films, and this was 24 of them. And then you have two of probably with Warner, a couple of the the world's greatest cartoonists in the non-Disney era. area, Chuck Jones and Bob Clampett. So the thing is that you got 1930s, and you've got two guys working for Tex Avery, and you've got Chuck Jones and Bob Clampett, and they're both working on stuff for Warner, and they're totally different. So what happens is that so I've got two things here. I've got Chuck Jones doing the Dover Boys, which is very kind of genteel, and then a lot more wacky is Clampett. So the thing is that Chuck Jones is kind of more stylistic. He's more formal, and Clampett, he is just totally off the wall, going crazy, just doing anything he can for a gag. And he also, one thing that Clampett was also famous for is what they were doing. It's like, imagine like a theater having a fourth wall, which is the opening that goes to the audience. There's this idea of breaking the fourth wall. And Bob Clampett is very well known for that. So this is the Dover Boys. We'll look at about 30 seconds of that. See, there's Chuck Jones.
Pimento University. Pimento U. Good old P.U.
Pimento U, oh sweet P.U. Thy fragrant odor scents the air. A pox on Yale, foo, foo, Purdue. Pimento U, my college fair. Oh,
Out and away, the most popular fellows at,
That's probably a
Out
professor.
and away, the most popular fellows at old P.U. are the three Dover boys. Tom, the fun-loving member of the trio. Dick, a serious lad of 18 summers, plus a winter in Florida, as related to the Dover boys in the Everglades. And Larry, the youngest of the three brothers. A gay outing at the park has been planned by the merry trio, and they're off to fetch their fiancée, dainty Dora Standpipe, at Miss Cheddar's Female Academy close by.
So you can see this is very, this is very highbrow humor. So let's take a look at some Clampett. And this, I think, is a documentary on it, actually. Might be. See, here we have the really obvious stuff, really big slapstick stuff. When he's saying T-bone, he's thinking it's like a T-bone steak. see two very, very, very different styles. Mel Blanc. Actually, there's a couple of things that aren't in the book that I'm talking about. One very much is Mel Blanc. For most of the Warner Brothers cartoons, Mel Blanc is the voice of Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, all these characters. So Jack Benny was a famous comedian, and
it was on a late night in January.
And this is a documentary, but
he says, "Great, great." He says, "What are you doing next Tuesday?" I wasn't doing the damn thing. I said, "I think I can make her."
And then,
away. What did you call him, Bugs Bunny?
What's up, Doc? There's a wabbit down there, and I'm trying to catch him.
Well, they told me that Bugs was a tough little stinker, and I thought, what kind of a voice can I give him? The tough character, maybe Brooklyn or the Bronx.
So I put the two of them together, Doc, and that's how Bugs Bunny came out. Pardon me, but you look just like a wabbit. Come here. Listen, Doc. Now, don't spread this around. But, confidentially, I am a wabbit!
Mel had an instinctive ability to create both a specific voice as well as a unique person.
So he did basically most of the voices for the Looney Tunes cartoons, and so he's probably one of the most famous voice actors in animation. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to see him. The other person is Carl Stalling. When you see, when Merry Melody starts up, you hear Carl Stalling. And the one thing is that he's really the person known for a lot of the Looney Tunes shorts and Merry Melodies and all that. And where he did this, he did one score a week. He did one entire score for a cartoon for 22 years. He believed that music and sound weren't separate, and he incorporated sound effects into his music, and this served the role of communicating story, action, and mood. So I'm going to play you something that has actually several takes to it, and it's from the cartoon Putty Cat Trouble with Tweety and Sylvester. And of course, I'm going to do something about a cat. But the thing is that you can see, if you think about this, imagine how good, we don't take cartoon music very seriously because, we're not thinking of it like classical music, but these musicians are easily as good as any symphony musician. So listen to this.
Here we go, action number 1171. Putty Cat Trouble, part 6, take 1.
Here we go.
Once more. Once more.
Think of this way, they're going through all these takes.
Once more, this will be the one. Once more.
There we go. Great. So, the thing is that when you're talking about these big movie companies, producing these cartoons, they are, they take them as seriously as the features, honestly. And then, cartoons go to war. Let's see. Basically, what's going on here? I forgot to scale the type up. But what you have is that you have animations, really kind of taking on. Oh, wait a second, I didn't change this. You really have things that are starting to talk about, World War II. In other words, basically, kind of like the ideal of freedom, etc. And you wind up with Superman. And an interesting thing is that actually Superman was created by two cartoon fans from comic fans from Cleveland, near where I live. And actually, believe it or not, Northeast Ohio in the United States is a big place for the comics and cartoon industry. Actually, it's very strange. So here you have Max Fleischer and Paramount. Action Comics would become Marvel. This is actually the beginning of the Marvel archive, a Marvel franchise. No, I said no, sorry, not Marvel, DC, sorry. Directed by his brother Dave Fleischer. You've got Seymour Keitel.
In the endless reaches of the universe, there once existed a planet known as Krypton, a planet that burned like a green star in the distant heavens. Their civilization was far advanced and had brought forth a race of supermen, whose mental and physical powers were developed to the absolute peak of human perfection. But there came a day when giant quakes threatened to destroy Krypton forever. One of the planet's leading scientists, sensing the approach of doom, placed his infant son in a small rocket ship and sent it hurtling in the direction of the Earth just as Krypton exploded. The rocket ship sped through star-studded space, landing safely on Earth with its precious burden, Krypton's sole survivor. A passing motorist found the uninjured child and took it to an orphanage. As the years went by and the child grew to maturity, he found himself possessed of amazing physical powers. Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. The infant of Krypton is now the man of steel, Superman. To best be in a position to use his amazing powers in a never-ending battle for truth and justice, Superman has assumed the disguise of Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper.
So there you go. So then on the other hand, you wind up with, on the other hand, you have Walter Lantz and his studio creating Woody Woodpecker, who's just, there's late 40s, there's this kind of, kind of sarcastic, wise guy sort of cartoon. Walter Lantz addresses this with, you've got Bugs Bunny and Warner Brothers, you've got Lantz Studios, you've got Woody the Woodpecker, and then we'll see later MGM will have Tom and Jerry, which you guys are probably familiar with.
Guess who?
Okay, I'm going to keep things fairly short. Whoa, wait a second. Things just bailed out on me here. Okay. So something that's very, very interesting about Woody Woodpecker's laugh is that it actually began from Bugs Bunny. So, Lance and some of his crew actually, kind of came. Oh, wait a second. No, wait. I think it was. Yeah. So, some of the guys at Lance Studios came out of Disney, and out of Warner Brothers. Sorry. And so, Woody Woodpecker has a laugh that originally was part of Bugs Bunny. So you have people who are going back and forth. Actually, this is one that I didn't know very much. Frank Tashlin, he goes over to Columbia Studios and he becomes production supervisor, and he creates a number of short pieces. The Fox and the Grapes, after the Sour Grapes story, and and then you wind up with this whole Fox and Grapes series, which, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't really that familiar with. Basically, the crow is trying to always outwit the fox, which is the fox is always supposed to be the smart guy.
Hey, pup. Looky. A scarecrow. How much you pay, pup? Pay?
So, you have a crow trying to be a scarecrow and then eating all the fox's stuff. So, on one hand, you're talking about a character who is stereotypically supposed to be very, very clever, and then, you've got two clever characters trying to outwit each other. So, this gets kind of interesting. So, in the 40s, you wind up with the National Film Board of Canada starting to support animators. And this is where you get people like Norman McLaren. Norman McLaren, he winds up not doing characters. He basically takes celluloid, he starts painting on it, he starts doing all this abstract animation, which is really fascinating. But what's interesting is the National Film Board of Canada supports a lot of independent artists, gets 25 Oscar nominations for Oscars, and so you wind up getting the you have Stanley Kubrick and his 2001 Space Odyssey that gets partially funded in 1968. And any of you conspiracy theorists, you want to start maybe thinking Canada. And then David Byrne's Talking Heads musical group videos in the 1980s. And then the other thing that's interesting is that you have Michel Gondry, who did, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? And he did White Stripes' Hardest Button to Button. Here's a little bit of Begone Dull Care, one of McLaren's first pieces. And I'll do about 15-20 seconds. Once again, we've got this whole thing from Fishinger, into Disney. Then now we've got on over into Norman McLaren. Really cool stuff. And this is something that I don't have in PowerPoint, and I hope you just listen. Those of you who are interested in experimental animation, there's another guy, Stan Brakhage, Brakhage. He's somebody else to look at. And then, if you want to get into some weird stuff, of course, you've got David Lynch. And so here's just a little bit about Norman McLaren. He's from Scotland, and at age of 7, a neighbor of his gave him a projector and a box of film. He went to the famous Glasgow School of Art, and of course he's into Fischinger, he's into Cohen, he's into Eisenstein, who we didn't talk about, but he's one of the great first Soviet filmmakers. He did Battleship Potemkin. We're not doing a film history at film theory class, so otherwise you would see Battleship Potemkin by Eisenstein. So the thing is that really what he's interested in just drawing and painting and motion and using film as a formal medium. He took film and he took the image off of it, and he just started painting and playing this with jazz music. And this is where he went, and really fundamental to a lot of
other instrument?
So now what he's doing is he's looking at the combination between
what else
sound
can you do?
And image.
Not bad. Try again.
It's very interesting.
That's a sound. We'll
and then on the other hand, here he winds up playing around with
sound. You can
having
even
the
create
sound
your
make
own
its own
by
sound
drawing
itself.
directly on the film. Norman McLaren, the motion picture artist, has been making some hand-drawn sounds, and now he's going to hear them for the first time.
So this is
Played
really
on
crazy.
a viola, a
He's
sort of miniature movie
going and
projector.
he's drawing on the sound on an optical soundtrack of an old film. Look at that. He drew the soundtrack.
It's not just guesswork. The sound of any of these patterns of lines can be calculated. The size controls the loudness.
So, Norman McLaren, actually, I think as far as experimental animation is concerned, probably one of the most important people, period. Hollis and Bachelor, they're from Hungary. And, this is the thing that's really interesting, is that Hungarian animation, Hungary is one of the great centers of animation in the world. And I think at least, I don't know in Arabia, but I know that at least in America, animators would know this, but I mean generally, Americans don't have any idea of how much work was done in Hungary. And so here we have Janos Halas and his wife Joy Bachelor. And so they had started their own Hungarian studio, creating advertising cartoons, and they also did some a lot of experimental work. This is called Dustbin Parade, and I'll go right into I'll go into it a little bit. Really some fun stuff.
That's no way to treat us. In wartime, too. It's high time we did something about this.
Why don't you all join up? I've had my calling up papers. Going in the Navy. Probably be posted to a destroyer.
Join up? Where?
Right over there, at the recruiting center.
But will they take us?
Go on, they're looking for fellows like you.
Thanks, mister.
So that's kind of funny. In other words, looking at the idea of junk, for recycling becoming part of the war effort. So, David Hand. I'm not going to go into this too much because of the fact that it doesn't like to play from PowerPoint. He's a British animator, and basically the thing is that he started an animation for the Rank organization, trying to really compete with America. Didn't quite, but he was born in the U.S. and so the thing is that he'd worked on a number of different things until actually the thing is that David Hand became the director of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So I'll let you go and take a look at this. And of course, what this is his famous Animal Land series, and this is the Animal Land cartoon about house cats. Because it's going to be about cats, if I can find it. Hans Fischer-Koesen. Something really interesting about him is that he's a German animator, and the thing is that probably the best German animator of the time during World War II. But the thing is that he was not part of the Nazi Party. Really interesting. So he loved puppet shows, and he didn't, and of course he wasn't well enough to go into service in World War I. But the one thing is that he worked as a medic, and the interesting thing is that because he wasn't involved in socialist realism in the Nazi Party, all this work he had done before World War II was considered degenerate. So this is why you probably may not have heard of this guy. Here's just a little bit of it. Let's do one of his most famous pieces, the Snowman. Here we go. Here's the Snowman. But Hans Fischer-Koesen. Look at his sense of timing. It's really fantastic. Really lively stuff if we can keep the computer from buffering. So there you go. And then a lot of Soviet propaganda during World War II. And this is actually beforehand. This is actually Soviet toys. Iman Ivanov and Ziga Vertov. Vertov is very famous for basically doing the man with the camera. And let's just take a look at this. Well, we don't really need to watch that. You see, it's very interesting stuff. And then lastly, we've got the Japanese stuff. From 1940 on, it's almost completely Japanese propaganda for the war. So, and that's really it. Really things about a lot of work about the Imperial Navy and with heroic little soldiers like Mabo's paratroop unit, and this is a little bit of Fuku-chan's submarine by Tadahito Mochinaga. That was 1944. So you can look at the rest of that. It's 32 minutes. The one thing that I'm actually kind of surprised that I didn't put in a lot of the American propaganda stuff. Maybe I'll put a couple of those out in the Dropbox folder because some of them are really funny and really sort of strange. So this is the 1940s. A huge period of time for animation. And you can see that animation, comes into its own. It's a huge industry, and then by the 50s, it starts becoming a mass media. It becomes a mass medium, and then by the 60s, of course, we're just it's hit television. It becomes kind of ubiquitous, and it becomes kind of universal, and it becomes a lot of the medium by the 70s and 80s, what we see today. And we'll talk about some things like, She-Ra and Skeletor and things like that week after this. So next week, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about Japan. We'll probably not touch so much on wartime Japan because of the fact that we've gone over it a bit. And as I said, I will probably put in a couple wartime cartoons from America, probably some Bugs Bunny stuff, and I'll put that in our folder. One thing I'm going to tell you is the fact that because of the copyright issues, we are now no longer on YouTube. I have a Dropbox folder for you. I think we can deal with this for about 3 weeks, but it's we now are basically going from the Dropbox folder. So, and that is going to be that'll be in whatever folder we're dealing with at the moment. So right now we have Dumbo, we have Pinocchio, we'll have Bambi, and this video that I just made for you, and thank you so much. So this is basically the end of the 6th lecture, the 1940s in animation. So thanks so much. Bye. Oh, okay, here we go.